Hi everybody, it's Malter here. Today we're going to be talking about my first time fleeing the country on my own, except I'm not fleeing the country, it's just a trip, and I'm not on my own, I'm with a tour group, but I didn't know anybody, so it was like I was on my own. Well, let's get into it. So I booked the trip in January, and we left in August of 2024. So I had 6 or 7 months of payments with EF Ultimate Break. At the end of everything, including expenses on the trip, I paid just over $4,000 for everything, which I think is great. One thing that's great about EF Ultimate Break, in my opinion, is the fact that you can book a trip pretty far in advance, and if you don't want to pay it all at one time, if you don't want to pay everything up front, they have payment plans, and you can choose to pay a monthly payment or a bi-weekly payment. I believe the payments wrap up about a month before you go on the trip, so you don't even have to worry about anything by the time the trip comes. I also elected to have EF Ultimate Break book the flights for me, which personally I felt like made things a little easier but also a little harder at the same time. I did not get to pick my flight itinerary because EF booked the flights for me, and I knew that going into it. What I did not expect was a 7-hour layover and missing a flight on the way there and missing a flight on the way back. Alright, so diving into the pros and cons of EF booking your flights for you, I would say pros, they say that they have partnerships with airlines and they're able to get you a good deal, so it might be like a little cheaper than if you book on your own. Another good thing is that you don't have to worry about finding flights to get you there in time, and you don't have to find your own way to the hotel after you land in your final destination, which was something that I did not want to do. You know, I'm in a new foreign country, somewhere I've never been before, I don't speak the language, and I was like, there's no way in hell that I would want to figure out how to get to the hotel and make sure I'm there on time to meet everybody to go everywhere else. So that's kind of where they got me. I don't know if they'll get you with that, but if you book your own flights, you also have to figure out your own transportation to the hotel from the airport, and you'll also have to figure out your way back to the airport when the trip is over. But if EF books your flights, they'll figure out that transportation for you and everything. The not so good things, the cons of EF booking your flights, for me, in my experience with my one trip that I've gone on, so this might not be everybody's experience, but long layovers, and I had a delay on my way to Greece, so I was stuck in London for longer than originally scheduled, but not long enough to go out and do anything. And then on the way back, we sat in the plane on the tarmac in Greece for about 2 hours. The flight itself was 11 hours. By the time I got to Chicago, there was no way I was going to make my other flight after going through customs, and so I ended up getting home the next day, like a day after I was supposed to. So, insane. There also might be some troubles like figuring out your flight numbers or something. That was something I was kind of confused about. Luckily, I figured it out before the trip. And you don't really get to pick when you leave, so there might be a little more flexibility. If you're booking your own flights, you can say, I want to leave not at 6 in the morning, you know. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the everyday itinerary of what we did on the trip, I wanted to tell you guys my personal recommendations and my personal pros and cons. Book all the excursions that you can. My philosophy when I was doing this was, when am I ever going to be in Greece again? You know, I wasn't thinking of 20 years in the future or whenever I might end up back there. But I was like, when am I ever going to have the opportunity to go to a traditional farm? Or, you know, when I'm going to get to go to an island of ruins again? So yeah, it's worth it. And a lot of people on the trip didn't book the experiences beforehand, and so they cost a little bit more because they were like, oh, what? These people I just met and who I'm like becoming friends with are going on the little extra trip. I want to go on that too, and it cost more. And then, yeah, so you can save like a little bit of money if you book everything before you go on the actual trip. And you can also guarantee that you have a spot on that optional excursion. Packing essentials, I did some research before I went on my trip, and these are things that I personally loved. Packing cubes, a battery pack, naturally, a small little shoulder bag, an outlet adapter, and secure tiny bag that you can have close to your chest. I don't know what it's called. I'm going to look it up and I'll tell you guys. Not so good things with the trip, like I mentioned, were the long layovers, flight delays there and back, lack of sleep, but I didn't realize how much of a party Mykonos was. Like, EF said on their website, like, oh, get ready to party, and I was not thinking they were being serious. I was like, this is a company. They don't know what they're talking about. They did. People were out until 6 a.m. Day one, I woke up. Actually, I didn't sleep. I was too terrified that I was going to miss my flight. So I didn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I got an Uber to the airport, sat at the airport for a little bit. 6 a.m., I boarded my first flight to Philadelphia, and I landed around noon, hung out in the airport during the 7-hour layover, and while I was there, I did currency exchange at the airport, which, by the way, I would not recommend. Currency exchange at the bank probably would have been cheaper, like a smaller exchange fee. Boarded my overnight flight to London at around 7 p.m. in Philadelphia and landed the next day on day 2 in London around 8 a.m. Now, this was something that I didn't know, but you have to go through security again after you land in another country. I just talked to the people at the airport and I was like, hey, I missed my flight. Please help. And they did. So I ate some food in the London airport, walked around for quite some time, booked the flight around 12:30, and then we landed in Mykonos around 6:45 in Greece. I went through and got my passport stamped, and then I was just waiting for the bus to the hotel. Saw a bunch of people from the group. I was like, oh, hi, some little introductions, things like that. We got to the hotel around 7:30. And because of my flight delays and everything, it was insane. I had to run up to my room. Also, it was a really confusing hotel. It was cool, but it was confusing. But I had to run up and throw my bags in the room. I freshened up heavily because I had just traveled for a really long time. So I freshened up, put on deodorant, brushed my teeth really quick, changed my clothes, fixed my hair, and I ran back down to catch the bus so that we could go to the city center, walk through the city, and get to our welcome dinner. By the time we were eating, it was around 9 p.m., and the drinks were included, which I didn't know, so I just was like, oh, I don't want anything, I'll just have my water. We went to a little oceanside bar at 10 after dinner, and then we were waiting for the bus around midnight, and we got to the hotel around 1 a.m. On to day 3, we did the included farm tour. We arrived around 1:30. We walked around, saw the plants and animals. There were cows that people were feeding. There were goats that they let us give some cheese to, and a dog, and lots of cats and donkeys. It was cute. I don't really know what any of the food was, but it was good. I liked it. We got back to the hotel around 4:30 p.m., and this is when I learned that Mykonos really is a party town. Our tour director had planned attendance to a party at a beach club. He got us 2 tables in the club, and they gave us complimentary buckets of alcohol, which was insane for $0. But we got there at 5 p.m. The sun was still out. Okay, sun was still out, but the club was packed. It was crazy, and it was a Tuesday. We were there for several hours, and we were all dying by 10 p.m., which is when people normally start heading out. Around noon, we got on a bus to go to Lindsay Lohan's beach club. If you end up at the Lindsay Lohan beach club or any beach club in Mykonos, just be aware of the extra charges. So our tour director told us oh, we're gonna sit at these umbrellas and it's gonna cost a little bit, but that's okay if you want to do that. You don't have to sit at the umbrellas. But I think most of us did. We were in the final 2 rows of the umbrellas at Lindsay Lohan's beach club, and It was supposed to be about 80 euros per umbrella. There were 2 chairs under each umbrella. We split the cost. It was just 40 euros per person. And they had a policy that if they didn't give you a receipt or there was no proof, I guess, then you wouldn't have to pay. But this is where they got sneaky, is like they were walking by and they slyly slid the receipt underneath the menu, or like they put it in a cup holder all tightly rolled up so that like maybe you didn't see it, but then they would say, you know. By the time we were leaving, we were paying. Some of the people in our group were having a little trouble with the workers because they were saying it cost more than the $80 I was on the receipt. So if you're at one of those places, I would just recommend keeping track of the receipt, like put it in your bag or something, keep it somewhere safe, so that if they're like, oh, you know, it's actually gonna be 100 euros, you can be like, nope. And I would also recommend using cash, because card is an option to pay for it, at least at Lindsay Lohan's beach club. But the girl I was sitting with, we were like, no, we're gonna give them exactly 80 euros because this is what it says on the receipt, and if they ask for more, we'll just say no. After we left that beach club, we went to another small little town. We walked around, there was a tourist shop, some people went into a church to light some candles, and then we had an included meal and we sat down for the group dinner. We got back to the hotel around 7:30, went to the pool around 8, and then we walked to the mini market close to the hotel around 11, and then went to bed around 1. I didn't actually end up sleeping, but not because I was out partying or anything. I was just feeling a little sick. But also, this was the day that we were going to the Island of Ruins, Delos, or Delos, I don't know, don't kill me. And we were supposed to be ready for the bus by like 8 a.m. So maybe that's another reason why I couldn't sleep, was because I didn't want to miss the bus and miss the boat that I had already paid for. It's kind of a time-consuming process to get there, because we had to take the bus from the hotel to the city center, and then we had to walk to the dock, and then the boat just sat there and was like waiting for people. We got to Delos around 11, and there was a walking tour with different guide. Like our tour director was there, but there was like a dedicated Delos guide walking around showing us things. It was really cool to see, and you know, it's like, why go to Greece if you're not going to look at some ruins and some ancient history, right? And there was a museum on that island too, so it was cool. It was fun. It took a little, like, about an hour to get back to the hotel again, and then we all went to the city center again as a group, but like everybody kind of did their own things while they were there. Some people were shopping, some people were eating together, some people wanted to go to the clubs again. We ended up eating dinner with some people from the group. This wasn't included. It cost a little more than I would have wanted to pay, but it was like a sunset view restaurant, like super close to the water. So it was cool. Got back to the hotel around 9:45, went out to the club at 10:45. Some well-known Greek person was celebrating their birthday at the club the same day we were there. So there were fireworks, and like one of the girls on the trip and I actually ended up on like a tabloid website in one of the pictures. So that was really cool. We left the club around 1:30. We took some pizza to the hotel at 2 a.m. And this night was actually really fun because a bunch of us from the group just ended up sitting on one of the balconies of the hotel because we had some rooms that were really close by each other. And we just sat and talked amongst ourselves for hours. People started heading out around 4:30 in the morning. After getting back to my hotel room at 6 in the morning, I left the hotel room again at 8 a.m. It was a free day, so people were kind of doing whatever they want, but the tour director was like, oh, there's a little hike that we can do if anybody wants to go. So me and a couple people went on that little mini hike. We walked to a beach for a little bit, and then a couple of us took an Uber to the city center again to grab some food and go shopping a little bit. But this was the last day, so we had to be back in time for the farewell dinner. But before the dinner, we did some traditional Greek dancing and, you know, broke plates and sang happy birthday to one of the girls on the trip. And then at the restaurant, the tour director gave us all little gifts and did like a little speech, and we took last photos and everything. But, you know, this was the last night, the last hurrah. I don't think there was anybody who wasn't going out again this night. I was packing from like 3 to 4 or 5 in the morning. And then it was day 7, and I had to leave the hotel at like 6 a.m. And so I did. Got on my flight around 8 a.m., had a little bit of a layover in Athens, and then this is where things started to like get kind of crazy again. My 11-hour flight from Athens to Chicago was delayed because we were all on the plane and we were sitting there for 2 hours at least. Not my favorite experience, but also because I was so sleep deprived. This flight went by pretty quickly. I think I was maybe a little delirious or something, but I was just in and out of consciousness the entire time. I woke up and they were giving ice cream on the plane, which was cool. I loved that. But yeah, landed at around 4 p.m. Chicago time, and customs was insane. I did the mobile passport control app or whatever to try and speed things up, and even then it was long and there was no way I was gonna make my flight. Also, don't bring produce from another country with you. Like, I feel like that's common sense, but I got a little bag of breakfast from the hotel, and I didn't really look in it because I wasn't hungry, so I didn't realize it had like 3 or 4 different things that I should not have brought with me. So I got almost in trouble for that. Overall, I would give this trip a 9 out of 10. It was really good and I really enjoyed it. It's just like the flight issues kind of were not the best. It really made things easier to not have to use my brain on the trip. You know, I didn't have to worry about booking a million car rides to get to places. That was all included with the tour bus. I didn't have to worry about not speaking the language because a lot of people spoke English, but also our tour director was from Greece, and so he would speak to people in Greek if he needed to and like figure things out for us. I didn't have to spend any extra money on hotels. That was all included in the price of the trip. I didn't have to spend any extra money on plane tickets. That was also included on the trip, which was great. Lots of really cool experiences. I met a lot of fun people, and it was just really good for my first time leaving the country and doing something on my own. I would use EF again. In fact, I have already booked another trip. So stay tuned for that one.